everyone, and welcome to Truth on Tilt. Today, we are honored to be interviewing a very, very impressive man who's been through a lot in his life. From being incarcerated to now being the founder and CEO of a nonprofit called End the Violence in Columbus, Ohio. He has received many accolades from many high-end government officials from Washington, D.C. through Ohio. And he loves to make sure he gets into the underserved communities and help with inner city youth to avoid possible future prison time, help people who need help change their lives. But most importantly, he kind of works as a mediator to break through very trying, stressful situations. Please welcome Dr. Sean Stevenson. All right, Dr. Stevenson, you're an organizer and a pioneer in the community of violence intervention, working directly with people at the highest risk. What are the key elements that make a good intervention program, in your opinion?
Information, influence, and integrity.
So when you say integrity, obviously you have to prove yourself, correct?
Yes.
What have you done to prove yourself to gain the trust of the people in these communities?
Well, they know that I come from a life that they follow and they try to mimic and emulate. They know that I went to trial. They know that I was a fighter inside of prison as well as outside of prison. And there was a whole bunch of people who signed off about my integrity and what I stand for.
So, go ahead.
While in prison, I was able to get people from different organizations to sit down and create a panel. And this panel affected the whole federal system while I was in it. It was about influencing the influencers to think different and act different and move different.
Yeah, back in the day, influencers were a little different than how an influencer is described now. So how did you get your word out from your board meetings while in prison?
We talked to people who were still in the networks of people that we dealt with. So although I was in prison, when I was able to get that board to come together and understand how it needs to look and what would make it better for all of us while we incarcerated. If we work together, we're not killing and we're not dividing. And everybody has a chance of getting home. Division keeps us at each other's necks. Division allows rumors and lies to be spread. When you work as one and you work as a unit, you can stop a lot of the rumors from the rumor mill. And them same rumors could get a person killed in there or raped.
So how did you keep everybody accountable while you guys were behind the bars?
While we was all together, everybody's responsible for their car, they call. The car is buried. So if you're from California, there's a person who's the head of the California car. If you're from New York, there's a person the head of the New York car. Mexico, all the various cities and all the various organizations have a leader inside.
Wow, it's a fascinating story. What are some of the unique challenges, though, that you did face while in prison trying to do this?
The challenge was to get people to see the common denominator. And that was that we do this time and do it as comfortable as we could.
Wow, unbelievable. So how long did it take you with your previous experiences once you were in prison to realize this is what really needs to be done?
It didn't take me long. When I first went to prison, I was 21. So I went in there as a hothead and I made a lot of foolish mistakes because I was angry at the system, society, and the people. And I said to myself one day, I kept going to the hole, staying in the hole for long terms. And I said one day, every time I go to the hole, I lose my possessions, things that I built and gathered while I was in prison. And I said to myself, I'm tired of getting locked up. Who gets locked up while you're locked up? That just sounds kind of corny to me. I'm locked up and I'm getting locked up again while I'm locked up. And I made a decision. If I keep moving how I was moving, I even said it in court. That somebody's either gonna kill me or I'm gonna kill somebody, which would have made my stay that much longer. And I started using rationality. How am I gonna do this time? And what are the things I'm not gonna allow to make this time do me? Once I did that, I came to grips. I can't control anything on the outside at this point. Behavior or actions of people, I felt I didn't have control of that. And I realized at a certain time while I was in federal prison that I could make a difference in another manner if I put the energy in that manner that I'm trying to make a difference.
So was there ever a time before you were 21 where you looked in the mirror and said, why am I doing this? I'm going to get in so much trouble. I could be locked up. Or did that never really play into the picture?
At the beginning of this, having dyslexia, you're not loved. Everyone's looking for love. I don't care, boy, man, woman, child. Everybody wants to be loved. And when people see what your weakness is, that's not love. You don't interpret that as love when people are talking down on you and browbeating. And because I was dyslexic, I didn't do well in school. My first encounter with bullies was my teachers, who would ask me in the classroom to come to the board and read or spell something. That was the first time I witnessed bullying. Then when people or my peers would tease me because I couldn't read and write well, that was bullying. And I took the power of bullying away from them by enforcing violence.
So
everybody's looking for acceptance and everybody's looking to be loved. So you're drawn to when people care about you and say they care about you, no matter what it looks like. The streets didn't hold that against me that I didn't read and write well. The streets loved the fact that I was able to take care and help, feed them, clothe them, protect them. The same thing that all males look for in life. To be a provider, to be successful. Success is taking care of your family, your people, and your loved ones, whoever you call that.
So today, I know it's a little off topic about the end of violence, but in the communities you serve, when you find young scholars that have learning disabilities, what do you tell them?
Neil, but when you have certain shortcomings, you can detect them in other people a mile away. So when I see somebody, first of all, I make them feel comfortable and let them know that's not going to deter me from loving them. I explain to them what I went through as a child and what I went through as an adult, because even to this day, I still get mistreated because of those learning disabilities. If you sit and you think about it, every federal and state building throughout the country says it's handicap accessible. But you and I know that's not factual, right?
Correct.
If they say wheelchair accessible, that's one thing. But dyslexic is a disability. And there's nobody at the courthouse directing a person where to go, how to communicate, how to understand. Even when you go to a restaurant on a date or by yourself or with your friends. If you don't read and write well, how are you going to use a kiosk?
Well, I also had a learning disability, and I believe in what you said, because I think you and I probably grew up at the same time. You know, the teachers kept telling my parents he has no shot of getting past 6th grade, 9th grade. He'll never graduate high school. And, you know, they basically, back in the day, they called me hyperactive, which now we know is ADD. And I also had cognitive processing issues. So unless I looked you in the eye, if I read something on a paper, I wouldn't remember it. Did you feel the one thing I realized is that my learning disability gave me other superpowers that a lot of people don't have. What would you say your superpower is right now?
I read people. People read books.
So do you feel as if you have a photographic memory?
I know I do.
Yeah. And doesn't that piss people off when you remember things that they have no recollection of at all? You're like, hey, hold on a second. Let me tell you about this. Do you think that has really played a part into you starting up your foundation?
The dyslexic piece did, because I realized that there's a lot of people who's diagnosed if they get checked, but there's a lot of people who couldn't afford it at the time. And I was in the schools in the 70s and 80s, and I was beaten a lot by my foster family because they were told by the teachers I didn't try to do the work and I wasn't paying attention in class. So I was always on punishments and get whooped. I got adopted. So my adopted family were very well educated. And because I wasn't, I didn't fit in.
So what role do you think education, working with disabilities, comes into play when you're trying to break the cycle of violence?
All our school teachers through the system throughout the country need to be retrained and restructured, because we discount people who have learning disabilities and they haven't even been tested, and we mistreat them. We quick to point and acknowledge their fault, but nobody has any say so how they was born.
So do you think teachers need to be trained better to be able to read people better? It's more of an emotional intelligence piece. And, you know, with my dissertation, that's one of the things I'm actually researching. And Maria, I'm also, I saw your bio. I'm also looking at allostatic load, which is chronic stress and what that does to the brain. And there's a lot of research that comes from the children of underserved communities. So, you know, I think going forward, I couldn't agree with you more. I think one of the biggest issues with the underserved communities is that there isn't enough research being done on the underserved communities when it comes to, most importantly, and what comes to my heart are the children. So going forward, have you thought of maybe starting some sort of prison reform where you get in there and you start helping these people that are in there come get diagnosed, probably with some learning problems?
Yes, we started a program which is pre-entry and re-entry. We work with people who may be going to prison, but also the ones coming out of prison. My team here, we've tried to work with the city to bring awareness. We help in the violence, has helped with legislation to get bills passed with dyslexic. With the governor here, 2011 or 12, the law was passed. Dyslexic was a law of disability. I played a major role in that. And this is why I'm so passionate about the work that I do, because I know the effect and how many people are affected by it. A lot of people don't know, when you talk about some of our great leaders or influential people, a lot of them have learning disabilities. People don't know John Gotti didn't read and write well. There's a whole bunch, I can name a gang of people who had a lot of influence who didn't read and write well. And that doesn't make them dumb because they didn't read or write well. We need to change how we view people and what we say makes you successful.
I think what
And the violence has been really focused on an asset-based model to really recognize, no matter where you are in life, no matter what kind of educational background you have, that you have assets. And that's one thing that Dr. Stevenson has really stressed, is that all of us have gifts, all of us have talents. It may not be to be able to read and write or to go through the educational system, but that everybody needs to be able to have the tools and the support to identify what their superpower is. And that's one of the things that that in working with folks, like Dr. Stevenson said, in pre-entry, meaning they may have an active case, they may have done something, but they want to start working now before they even get to prison, before they're coming back home. They recognize that they need to change. And the violence helps to work with them to make that change. And it starts with just an assessment of what are your needs, and both physical health, mental health, and socio and economic, to address the whole person. And that's really been the focus of violence.
So, in your opinion, what's harder, the pre-entry or the post-entry?
What did he say?
What's harder, the pre-entry or the re-entry?
Well, I mean, I'll answer that. I mean, you know, re-entry into the community is always difficult for, people who are incarcerated, because in addition to, being worried about their economic situation, financial situation, there's a lot of barriers to coming out of prison, generally not having ability to get a driver's license and, so on and so forth. But even on just a smaller scale, it's just being reintegrated into society. It's a hard part. And it can take you months, even years, just to get adjusted to that. I mean, when you got people that are going into prison, obviously they're looking for help. They're looking for a way out. So ETV, is kind of like that stopgap between them going into prison and having something to come out to. So the transition is obviously easier for people who have some connections to the community, but reentry is a hard thing. I mean, we don't have a society. We have a society that pretends like we give people second chances and we want to see people thrive and come out, but that's not true. Most people who have felons, it's a huge barrier to get a housing, to get a job, to even interact with their family members and things. Because once you have that label on you, once you have that stigmatism on you, nobody really validates you as a person. You're almost, you're almost not even seen. Yeah, you're alienated from everybody else. So that's one of the problems that I think one of the problems we have with addressing, violence and addressing issues related to, for lack of a better word, like impoverished communities. People who come in from these communities are kind of left out. And where I think ETV is so different than most of the organizations out there is because you have leadership that actually comes from the streets or for these impoverished communities that can identify and relate to what people are going for. Unfortunately, most of the information and knowledge with working with offenders and reentry is from the academic world. You have like some institutions that have went and said, this is the model we need to use. This is how we need to work with people. But it's not very often that you have people from within the system that are able to come out and influence change. And when that happens, other people don't necessarily validate that. So, I mean, we can look now and say, look at the success ETV has, and it's making these great accomplishments, and ETV can do things in the community that no other organization can do. However, most government agencies, most funders and people are reluctant to validate one over another. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, he does something unique and he's really making a difference in terms of violence. But on the other hand, we got all these other agencies that have leadership and years of experience and social services or psychology or whatever, treatment modalities, and they have all this information, but the information wasn't derived from people who actually grew up and experienced it. So that's probably, I think, from my perspective, one of the biggest challenges is now you have people who gravitate to ETV because they say, I can relate to what Dr. Steven or Sean, I can relate to what these brothers are saying because they truly understand and have been in a situation similar to my situation. But getting the larger portion of society to see that because that mentality still exists. They look at him and say, well, wait a minute, you know, uh, wasn't he a criminal? Wasn't he on the other side of the law? And that doesn't necessarily bring to validating that he has, ability to be more with these people. It generally is met with some resistance and some hesitation. So I know that was kind of a long answer, but I definitely think for anybody who has to reintegrate into society with that stigma, I mean, you starting to say he still deals with that kind of discrimination today. And unfortunately, he deals with that discrimination from people who should be supporting it and wanting to learn from that experience. It's not often that you have that type of knowledge and that knowledge base that actually comes from, the community or the areas that you're trying to impact. I mean, think about it. We act like, if you say the ghetto or the hood or whatever, everybody just has this idea that everybody out there is just a criminal. And that's just entirely not true. I don't care how poor the community, I don't care how rough it may seem. It's just a small percentage of people that are creating massive amounts of problems. However, because those areas are policed so heavily, it gives a different impression. So you see the number of arrests and people that are caught up in crime. Well, a lot of those are good, hardworking people. So he can step back and say, wait a minute, I don't care if that dude does have blunt in his ashtray. He works every day. He's a good dude. He's taking care of his family. But when you have 10 times the amount of police patrolling areas like these inner city areas where he's working versus maybe like a suburban or rural area, you're not going to come up with the same type of statistics. Take all these police out of the inner cities and move them to the suburbs, and you'll see a uptick in crime in the suburbs because there's more people to pull them over.
Well, first off, I want to say thank you for that long-winded answer because it brought up a whole bunch of questions that I really think I would love to know answers to. When it comes to reintegration, how do you prepare people for that?
One of the things I'll say and speak about coming back out, that reintegration. First of all, the prisons don't prepare you for what you're coming out to. When I left in 92, the laws were different. The behavior was different. The attitudes were different than they were in 2009 when I was released. Things that was illegal is all right now. Things that we thought were wrong is cool now. So I still deal with trauma, seeing some of the things that was beating me that was wrong as a kid to partake in, and it's justifiable and all right now.
So, yeah, it does. It does. So the thing is, I see your point. I mean, if you go in 92 and you come out, let's say 2017, it's two different worlds. So does End of ETV go in and sit down with any of these soon to be released and say, this is how it is now. This is what you need to be prepared for. This is what
we're going in, but we put in a program where we'll be able to go in more so than what we do now. I used to go in with a ministry program, and because of my background, a lot of times the security in the institution doesn't feel comfortable allowing me in because of who I was and my background, but they don't understand how I'm the one who can help change the conditions of a people. Because if I was a computer hacker and was good doing it, the government would employ me. No matter if I did do corruption or illegal things while I had a computer. Same thing goes with me being good at whatever it was I did. I did a number of things and was good at it. So hire me to help combat it. But instead of hiring me, you put me down. Instead of you allowing me to wake up the people with my knowledge and influence, you speak down to them about me. You asking them, why y'all want to hang with this guy? He don't even read and write. This guy don't even have no money. Why y'all want to deal with him? But then you promote that you can't be nothing or have nothing without the money. Society promotes success is money. Society promotes power is cars, jewelry, chicks. They promote it. And right now, look at our music industry. Look at our actors. They're all going down for sexual behavior, misconduct, drugs, murder. So who are our Black leaders throughout our country right now? And who do young people have to look up to and acknowledge that they made a mistake and changed it and turned their life around?
Well, then I would make the argument to you and all your fellow board members that you had, you guys need to be on TikTok and Instagram almost every single day, releasing a message, because that's where the kids are going now for their leadership. And it's sad, but that's what they're doing. That's where they get their news from. And what they read and see, they believe is true. So for you to be very powerful, I think you getting your message out there all the time would be huge. I think that's how you reach out to that community, but we can have that discussion at a different time. I'm going to ask you, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's something that it has already been in the works, to come up with an infrastructure to facilitate that. The network of influencers that End the Violence has, that does have a national reach, because the kids in Columbus are looking at Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, and all of those influencers. And those folks that are in Dr. Stevenson's network can reach those folks, and we just need to facilitate the technology to do that.
Yeah, I think it would be very powerful, and I would be more than honored to help you with something like that, because I for one, I try to avoid social media because I always seem to get in some political fight of some sort, let's say. But I think it's very powerful having 3 daughters that think the whole world revolves around TikTok and Snapchat and on and on and on. If you want to get out there now, that's definitely something that makes a difference. And that's the difference between someone who was incarcerated in 92 and came out in 2020, for example, right? I mean, in 92, we were lucky if we had a clear picture on our TV because the rabbit ears, someone turned on a microwave somewhere or something. But nowadays, it's completely different. Got a question for you then. What would you, and if you do not feel comfortable answering, I completely understand. What would you say to someone who believes that violence is actually, from all these politicians, is something they need to raise money and get reelected?
I would, to be honest, I would tell them that the foundation of our country was done with violence. So it's historically our history. That's what our country was built on, violence. And then we want to know why there's so much violence. So I would have to agree to it.
Okay. And I can add something, I think, to the question that you're asking is, we have a lot of elected officials and leaders nowadays that aren't necessarily interested in change. They're just interested in the appearance of change. So if you're interested in the appearance of change, you're going to do more of the same. So you usually get from elected officials or leaders, hey, I'm going to be tough on crime, and that generally connects with enforcement. So we're gonna get more law enforcement, more police. Well, you live long enough, you're like, man, how many police do we need? We just keep And the problem doesn't get better. We keep seeing from a societal standpoint, the problem gets worse, but you got more people. Well, you also got, and people probably be upset with hearing me say this, but let's just call it what it is. You got law enforcement branches that they don't mind, those upticks in crimes because it puts heat and pressure on the local governments to give more money. There's no pressure on local governments to think differently. It's just more of the same. So everybody's like, more police stole more money. So you get an organization that comes and says, we're not going to deal with this in a traditional manner. Instead of being inclusive and saying, we need to learn what he knows because he comes from there. We need to learn what he knows because he's making a bigger impact than what some of these outreach and prevention agencies are making. And that's what makes it complicated because elected officials and leadership out there now is more concerned with the appearance, and with that, they don't want a lot of risk because with risk comes liability. So this guy is outside the box. It's different than anything that I've seen. Who I want to be the person that gets behind that and champions that. There also needs to be more education about this because usually law enforcement doesn't care about any other means of addressing the crime. Now they may say, okay, well, if you're working on issues in a society, then you're a part of the solution. But that model of how they enforce makes our communities unsafe, and they're not willing to look at that. They're not willing to look at the fact that, well, people in these communities are reluctant to call the police for assistance, so we can't solve crimes and we can't solve murders. But there's a flip side to that. You call the police out to a simple altercation with a couple young people, and they don't know how to deal with the community. They might show up at a house where there were some teenagers in a neighborhood fight that was maybe going to get a little heated. They're not coming for a resolution. They're coming to arrest somebody. Generally, the people that get arrested are people that these people in the community need. So if you call the police and the uncle's out there and the police don't like the uncle's body language and what he's saying and he gets hauled off to jail, what if this uncle pays the rent? What if he put food on the table? See, that happens far too much in these communities. No one talks about it. All they want to see is people getting locked up, people getting prosecuted, and that's where the money comes. Not to keep your community safe. I said earlier, small percentage of people you can attribute a large percent of crime. I've known this man my whole life, and I know one of the reasons that our communities are safe, and I come from the community, so I know this because he also has. You talk about influencers. He also has the respect and clout from these guys out here where he can go talk to them and they say, you know what, you're right. I don't want to be out here doing this. I got to feed my family, and so I've seen him. He'll pay them out of his own pocket. He'll give them jobs to do, working, cleaning, doing whatever. Hey, man, clean my car. Just to keep them off the street. Call me. Before you do that, call me. And these are the same people are the people that you don't want out there having to, you don't want to force these cats out here to survive. But when people see that in a non-traditional way, well, he's hanging with thugs and well, yeah, that's how you're going to keep the community safe. And it's interesting because if you go back into the early history of our country, you go back to I'm sure you probably seen the movie The Gangs in New York and things. It's true. It's true. The politicians couldn't beat them. So what did they do with a lot of those Irish gangs? They made them law enforcement. Those are people who are able to clean the neighborhoods up and keep them safe. So it's like, why go in there and try to arrest everybody instead of trying to build from that community with influencers who can make a difference? Why not take an influencer that can bring them around and have them doing something positive instead of going and arrest them? Because you can go and arrest 10 dope dealers on the east side today. All you leaving is the door open for 10 young people to try to fill that spot. And what they're going to do, they're going to go out here to get rep. They're going to go out here to commit crime so that people respect them so that they can fill those roles. Now, if you got somebody that goes and says, hey, we want to chill this out, change the neighborhood, and we're going to help you. We're not going to look at you because you carry a reputation of a hitter or this and that and treat you like, you're a cancer to the community because you live here. We need you to help us keep it safe. And honestly, I'll take a handful of hitters and change the community quicker than 100 police officers.
Facts.
Right, and the thing is, there's a fundamental difference between law enforcement and what means success to law enforcement and what means success to the community and to ETV. Because law enforcement success in violence reduction means more arrests, more people in jail. But success around the violence and success for the community is a decrease in interaction with the police, a decrease in arrests, because we create alternatives for people to live and eat and thrive.
So, perfect segue. Where does ETV come in now? Where
I mean, ETV is out of the box, you know, and that's been met with resistance, I think, from local people because you know what Doc is saying. Like, I'm not gonna go out here and push the police agenda because I'm for keeping the community safe and keeping the community. I know how to keep the community safe, and I'm an influencer. I know how to make a difference. So yeah, you know, ETV is going to have a little different mob. I mean, if you have a situation that comes to you and there's a young kid and you pull him over, you talking to him, and this kid is heated up and he got a burner on him and he about to go, you know, do some dirt or whatever. You got ETV that says, nah, man, we're gonna work with you. We're gonna take this away from you. We're gonna help you change your life. We're gonna engage your parents. Generally know him, know his family. I mean, in most of these communities, you have a few people in these communities that know everybody, come from the communities and have that kind of impact on them. Versus a police, oh, you seem like a good kid. Now I gotta give you a case because you had this gun on you. I gotta go and arrest you, and I gotta, you know, I gotta get you know, take your mom and get her a case with Children's Services for educational neglect because you ain't been in school. It's not ETV's not coming in here playing a political game. It's trying to keep the community safe. The community enjoys it when the community is safe. They're generally reluctant to hear how that's done. So if you know, you know, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but there's a lot of prevention and there's a lot of outreach programs that call themselves intervention, and they're throwing barbecues or basketball games and saying, well, we got the kids, you know, playing basketball or cleaning up or doing this, and that's really impacting change. But generally, those kids are kids that aren't the kids that's out here really going to be getting into the stuff that you're talking about. The hardcore families and the things like that out here, they're not dealing, they don't have that trust level. You know, they can pick up the phone and call the man sitting next to me and say, man, bro, get over here. I got to talk to you. It's going to be some trouble. It's going to be some smoke in the city. There ain't many people that you can call and do that. So our communities and elected officials and leaders, they got to get outside the box. They got to stop thinking that, you know, because this person, you know, has been in law enforcement, it's totally different things, man. I mean, it's just, we can't enforce ourselves out of this problem. We can't build enough prisons to fix this problem. At some point, we got to start looking at people who come from these areas and empowering them to do more. And if you're not an influencer and you're not one of those people, you know, you send people into the community that say, hey, I'm here to help you. Well, so are the probation officers, so are the social workers, so are all these people. That's not who they listen to. You wonder why they listen to the rappers, to the dope dealers and this and that, because dope dealers are biggest employers for some of these people. So who do you want to give the money to? You get the money to all these agencies that a person's going to feel reluctant to go inside because nobody looks at them, or you're going to put it in the hands of an organization that the people already embrace and feel is the part of them. So he looks at, how do I fit a person in a job? Like, how do I find a match for this person? This person right here, I'm going to bring this job to this person to make it work. Everybody out there is saying, you got to change, you got to be something different to go get this job. That's sometimes hard for people that did 5, 10, 20 years in prison, and this is all they know. I mean, you know how hard it is out here now, and you send them out here to eat, and they can't eat. Well, you got influencers on the negative side saying, come on, let me give you some work, bro. It's only so long somebody gonna go without feeding their family before they're gonna go. You got to start looking at these influencers like corporations because they hire.
Facts.
So, how do you nowadays balance your street credibility with the leadership you're trying to do right now? Is there ever a conflict that you have to resolve within yourself?
Nah, because when a person knows you to be honorable and stand on what you say, they don't challenge that. And every month, Neil, at the end of the month, we have a town hall meeting with all the leaders from across the country. In every city, they on this call. And when people see the person they follow and look up to on these calls with us, it speaks volumes. The DOJ's on the call as well. And the DOJ say they can't even believe how we got all these people to come together and talk about curbing violence. They can't even do that. Police say to me, how is your program working, Sean, if nobody's going to jail? Because to them, they identify when something working and rips long sentences. And I explained to them, you know it's working because the numbers are down and the people who have all the influence have changed their life. That's how you know my program works. Because I deal with the influences. I influence the influences to do something different. And sometimes that can become threatening because to certain people in government, they feel threatened by it. People say to my team all the time, so what's going to happen if something happens to Sean? Let's talk about what we can do while Sean is here. Not make the comments, what's going to happen when something happens to Sean.
So when you look at these meetings that you have, are these meetings getting more cred? Are they getting easier to have? Do you still have like the same questions being asked all the time? Because when I look at, well, at least when I look at like political meetings, I feel like nothing ever gets done. A lot of stuff gets said, not a lot gets done. How are your meetings going?
Well, the good thing, to answer that, the good thing is the meetings are easy for us to have as far as from our level. City gets in their own way. This is in every major city. They get in their own way because they don't allow the right people at the table who can curb the violence in their various communities because of their background and who they are, because of their influence, because they can't be controlled. See, I notice government doesn't want to work with nothing or no one they can't control. And that's the mistake number one.
So how did you convince Columbus, Ohio, that you were legit and you were the guy?
Well, I created a job for myself and I told them it could go either way. You can either work with me and let's make this a success together, but if you keep me in fatigues and make me work as survival, Rambo, I'm going to be the only one to succeed to my goals, whatever that may be.
That made me chuckle because it sounds like you used a little bit of a Jewish guilt trip. Oh, man.
I think that it was really key as Dr. Stevenson, when he first came back, that he didn't wait for approval to do the work. He saw the need that was out in the community. He was out there on the streets every day and on ground zero with the people doing this work. Before community violence intervention had a name, he was doing it. And that caught the attention of some key people, both in the community and in the city. And when those people started creating a dialogue with him, things were able to progress. And it was really, as you always say, that when you're out there doing the work, the right people can notice you. You don't wait for them in order to get started. Just do what you know is right. And so I think that on that level, that things with other folks that are on ground zero and grassroots and communities across the country, that momentum has really just continued to grow. And we have more and more people on the ground in their communities saying, we want to end the violence here. And they don't wait to have a full-on program or have a partnership with the city. They just go out and do it. And we're here to guide them and advise and then also to hopefully be a bridge between their city government and their grassroots efforts. And we bring to bear the folks that have worked with us here in Columbus, the folks that have worked with us on a state and a national level to say, you know what, this really works. We might call it credible messengers right now, using people with lived experience to be part of the solution. But it's really something that the mental and behavioral health community has for many years called cultural competency. Culture just isn't about your nationality. It's about where you're from. It's about your community and the laws and the morals that exist within any given community. And the violence is culturally competent in dealing with these folks that are justice involved, folks that have been burdened by inequity and poverty and racism. We have that cultural competency, and so we are able to speak to those things.
And I'm gonna be honest, it's a fight. The reason I'm here working with ETV and dedicated to ETV, if you would have asked me this 3 or 4 years ago, I would have been like, nah, I'm good. And I'm gonna tell you, I know this man my whole life. And since he's been home, I've watched him when he came home and said, I'm gonna end violence. Did a coffee shop, bookstore, did all kind of stuff. And and because we grew up together, he would always say to me, like, man, come on, bro, like I need your help in this. And let me just tell you, like, I we come from the same neighborhood. I grew up, I consider myself a fairly good kid, but it's same, all grew up in the streets. I went to prison when I was 19. I got out, you know, went through all the ups and downs in life, but I moved away, got my undergrad degree at Clark Atlanta University, came back, got my master's degree at Ohio State. I got a master's in social work administration. So I worked in nonprofits for a long time. So at the tail end of this, I'm seeing all the work that he's doing and the struggles. I was always resistant, like, man, it's just that's what it is. It's the bureaucracies, people not understanding, people don't really care. For me, you would think somebody who grew up in the inner city, lived through all of that went and had a clinical degree in administration that would be validated. No, that was something that I generally was advised by all my mentors, never let people know. Even though people from Columbus knew, like, oh, that's a street kid, they knew that. But most people from the professional world, it was never validated. It was never something that would come up. So when I watched him go through all the struggles about a year ago, really looking at him fight some of the fights, and I had to help, and I'm gonna tell you why. A lot of the guys, a lot of the streets, and I'm talking about the good and the bad. Like the worst of the worst that we grew up with. The guys that I used to think, man, this dude is the devil. Man, there ain't nothing that's ever gonna change this cat's life. I would see Chom's program by working with him, listen to him speak to young people, listen to how their minds change. And I'm just sitting here like, man, like this is crazy. Like, how is it that we all were impacted with so much trauma growing up and doing all this that we don't get behind an initiative that really works? So I started looking at my buddy like, man, listen, we got to come help. We got to come help. But it's almost like you get fought on so many levels, so much of the time that it just takes the steam out of you. He re-energized me because he's fighting this fight. But don't make any mistake. There's at least 2 or 3 times a week that we sit in here and it's like, the anxiety is to the ceiling because we fighting everybody around us. And he's competing. If he says it once, he says it at least 100 times a week. Don't they want to help people? And I say over and over again, the systems that we have in place, especially in the United States right now, are not about helping people. It's about the appearance of helping people. If you're an elected official, you're concerned with your constituents, you're concerned with being reelected, you're concerned with all other issues and variables going on. The ones that are very, very minor to you, the safety in communities. Now, no one will come out and say that, but most of these people live in safe communities. So nobody's going to say that. They're going to pretend. But follow the amount of time. How often you only see elected officials and community leaders out at events when something goes wrong. It's not, do we really, really want change? Because if you really want to change, wouldn't you want the people that were impacted by it? Wouldn't you want to sit down and talk to people like us who grew up in these inner cities and made it out and survived and say, wow, what was unique about you? That's not who they want to talk to. Unfortunately, most of our leadership and our elected officials, I don't care if they are Black, they don't come from the community. I tell them all the time. I sat in graduate school with, first of all, when I was in graduate school, there's only a fraction of us that are even minorities. But of that fraction of minorities, none of them know what it's like to grow up. I can't even name one right now that really knows about growing up on the streets. Now, even if they grew up in a community, they usually grew up isolated in the community, protected in the community.
Right.
Then they grow up and say, well, I grew up on the east side or the south side. But did you really? The cats that really grew up in the hood, we really know each other. So when you get those elected officials that can say, yeah, I grew up in this neighborhood and everything like that, really, do they really, really relate to these issues and to this environment the way we're talking about? So you got to bring those voices to the table. But they don't like how these voices sound. These voices don't look like them. They don't come from their communities. They don't come from their schools. And if you do, they don't want to validate that, because if they validate that, what does it do to their credentials?
Well, I don't look at a single. I take that back. There are some politicians that are in it for the right reasons, but they are also the minority. And secondly, I want to read your dissertation from Ohio State. I think it would be mind blowing, just the way you just elaborated what you just said. Dr. Stevenson, if you could do one thing for prison reform, what would it be?
I could do one thing for prison reform. What would it be?
But there's 1,000 things that need to be done. We could probably have like 85 podcasts on that. But it's your past. It's your past.
Accessibility for folks that have come out and been and changed their lives to be able to go into the prisons and effectively communicate with them and give them that message sooner rather than later.
But I think now you have enough credibility with government officials that is that not getting easier for you?
They acknowledge me, but they don't want to play with me.
So what keeps you from banging your head against the wall?
No, I bang my head against the wall all the time.
Okay, good. You're human. Good. Okay. Yeah, because I from the passion that you behind your speech and the amazing team you have surrounding you, I could see it getting very frustrating because you're the type that seems to want to get out there and have a huge outreach everywhere you can. So what have you done to create more outreach in other communities? Do you have ETV Seattle, ETV Los Angeles, ETV Dallas, or are you just
My outreach is to the people who are the influencers to get them to understand this platform and what needs to happen and how it needs to happen. North Carolina wants us to come, Virginia, Philly, Cleveland. I've been in LA, I've been in Chicago, I've been in DC, I've been in New York, New Jersey. So everybody is familiar and everybody wants to build a branch in the violence in their community. And I hope that we get in position to make it happen quicker than later. We're proactive, not reactive. And that's the other big difference with us. And we take on liability. We don't allow that to stop us from doing the work. The only people who really sign a waiver where they don't get charged for liability, they don't have issues, are the police, and they're not good at what they do. I hate to say that. It's too many shootings, too many deaths, too many beatings, too much abuse. And the only way that's going to change is you put the people in the space that know how to bring balance. And it's not by a book.
So, do you think police departments want to sit down and talk to you about how to de-escalate a situation?
We offer to assist them and engage them into learning how to cooperate and interact with people from our community. We haven't had a call back.
So now I'm going to let you just have the floor. Can you give us an example of what you feel was one of your greatest accomplishments since you started ETV?
Showing the effect that a person could have no matter what shortcomings they may have, or no matter how you look down on them. I feel as though we've changed a lot of people's lives. We changed the mindsets. We changed the conditions in which they live. And we brought hope. And that's one of the best feelings in the world, when you see hope in a person who didn't have it. I seen the most feared man in prison break down when Obama was elected in office, Neil. And society don't know this because it wasn't talked about or spoken on. And when I seen them, that's what made me get on this mission. See, I didn't start this out here. I started this in there. So I was doing intervention in the joint. That's when I started the collaboration, making the tabletop discussion. See, people talk about the round table. We started that. I started that so long ago. It's just not advertised or spoken. But a lot of the people who's out here doing intervention now, who come from that background, it started with us in there. Collaborating, promising each other we're gonna do it when we get out. King Tone, myself, founders of the Bloods, founder of the Crips, Latin King, Italian family, just different organizations made a promise with me and they kept it. And we still interact to this very day. Because one of the things that we realized was the power that had nothing to do with money. It was the information. And as long as we keep networking, we're going to be exchanging information. And that's what's going to make us successful.
Information is surely power. It really is. And so, question, when you guys had these meetings in prison, did it ever cause you to get into trouble at all when you were doing your interventions in prison?
I think the police didn't like it because it made us come together. And their threat was we was going to come together for the wrong reasons versus the right. Bless you. So when they would do shakedowns of the units, a lot of us had pictures with each other. And they would confiscate those pictures, letters with each other. They would confiscate them because those letters are keys to when you go into other facilities. Those pictures serve as keys. Because when you go to another organization, another faculty, another prison, and they see you in pictures with their comrades, that means you all right. They can sit down and engage. Those pictures gave me license to operate. And every prison I went to, I was able to get them to unite and take pictures together, which helped everybody, because most people don't understand things that take place in prison spill out in our communities. So if I can get the people inside of prison to lead in a righteous way, in a righteous manner, it takes a lot of the grief and the work from the grandmother, the grandfather, the father, the mother, of trying to get their kids not to get involved with certain things. See, it's not coming from the grandparents, it's not coming from the parents, it's coming from the people who lived it. And when kids see us, they know how far we made it up. They look at that as success because they equate success to money. But now that we've taught each other and learned from each other, we know the real power is information. And if the government wants to keep something from somebody, they either kill them or lock them up. We was able to take that and reverse that.
So when you were trying to deactivate a situation in prison, I couldn't think of a higher stress situation. How did you keep a level head, and how do you teach people now to keep a level head during high stress situations?
Keeping a level head and keeping stress down and keeping the anger and animosity out keep you having a longer lifespan. If any of those three things come into that interim, you're shortening your lifespan because somebody's either going to kill you or you're going to kill someone.
Do you think a lot of them care at that point about lifespan, or are they more worried about street cred?
Well, it depends on who the messenger is. Because if it's the right messenger, they'll understand about the lifespan. See, I don't want my people to talk about me as a story. I want to leave a legacy. And that's what I'm.
So let's talk about the legacy then. What is the legacy you care to leave behind?
The legacy is bringing us together. The legacy is being a person who goes down in history of making change. Showing the community and the country, no matter your skin tone, the texture of your hair, or your education, none of that matters. What matters is how we interact and embrace one another.
So what are you doing so future generations can build on what you started?
Building our lives. One of the things that's going on, okay, prime example, the graduation ceremony. Here it is, people from the Jewish Foundation are being recognized. People from the Italian organizations being recognized. I'm making sure that people see there's people from all walks of life who are doing great things. And they work better when they work together. This is going to be a historical thing, Neil, because we're telling the narrative of this story. It's coming from us.
And it seems like it's only chapter 1.
Just chapter 1. I've been doing this 16 years now. And like you said, we still in chapter 1.
Well, if people want to find out more about End the Violence, where can they find information?
The website is endtheviolenceoh.org, and that has all our contact information and events coming up. So that would be the best reference. You can also get a hold of the End the Violence headquarters through our toll-free number, which is 833-ETV, the number 4, all, ETV for all. And we'd be happy to talk to anybody.
Sounds wonderful. And I'm going to make sure this is only interview 1. I would love to continue our conversations because I'm pretty sure we can go a lot deeper. And I want to thank you for your time, and especially thank you for what you're doing, because society right now is in a weird place, and we need many people who believe the way you believe, the way I believe, but it's hard to find because everyone just wants to be so mad at each other right now and point fingers instead of working together. So again, thank you so much. and we will be in touch soon.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks, buddy.
You got it.
Of my street with a knife held in my back.
Dude, I just, my head is spinning because I have still so many questions I wanted to ask him. Anyways.